Mr.
President, I ask that the sitting of the Senate be suspended to allow Jamaica's Poet Laureate, Olive Senior, to present a selection of her poems to the members of the Senate.
Members would have heard the question that the sitting of the Senate be suspended to allow Poet Laureate Olive Senior to present a selection of her poems. Those in favor? Aye. Against? And before I invite the Poet Laureate to read a selection of her poems, I take the opportunity to, first of all, welcome the political ombudsman, Honorable Donna Parchment-Brown. Welcome to the Senate. It has taken the presence of one of your parishioners here to bring you over, and the new, relatively new, British High Commissioner, Honorable Judith Slater, who has had occasion to interact with a number of our parliamentarians who were recently in the United Kingdom. Welcome, High Commissioner. Now, one of the advantages of being President of the Senate is that I can use my position to meet people who I've only admired from a distance. And certainly, Olive Senior falls in that rank. I was telling her earlier that her book, an encyclopedia of Jamaican heritage, sits on my desk, and I refer to it frequently. Olive Senior is the third Poet Laureate of Jamaica since independence. Ms. Senior is an award-winning 18 books of fiction, non-fiction, poetry, children's literature, and other published works. She is born in the parish of Trelawney. That's only one. But spent quite a bit of time in Westmoreland, so she is a person from the West. She succeeds Lorna Goodison, who served as Poet Laureate from 2017 to 20, and Professor Mervyn Morris, Poet Laureate of Jamaica from 2014 to 2016. I'm going to invite her now to read a selection of her works, and by way of a special request to say a few words before she begins about the environment. Welcome, Poet Laureate.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you all for paying me this honor to invite me to be in this chamber and in the presence of our important lawmakers. I take this as a tribute not just to the Poet Laureate, but to poets in general. We usually feel like the orphans of culture. So thank you for privileging me in this way. When I became Poet Laureate, I was told that I could choose the topics that I wanted to promote, and I've chosen two. The first one is the establishment of a poetry archive, which you will be able to hear shortly, but it consists mainly of Jamaican poets reading their work, not just so you don't have to read it, you can listen to it in your car or whatever. We have launched it, but it's not quite up yet. We will inform you of that. And the second thing, for the next 2 years, I want to focus on the environment. I want to use poetry as a way of enabling us to talk about environmental issues. I want to encourage children to write about poetry, read poetry, and so on. And one of the projects that I'm hoping to interest the government in, and I think there might already be interest, is the establishment of a parish tree, having a tree identified with every parish, because you know how competitive we are about our parish. And I won't say much more, but you know, if you think about a tree, you can use a tree to talk about every single aspect of nature, of life, and we can use it to tell stories. And if we had a parish tree and we told stories about that tree, like the story of mahogany or of logwood or the cotton tree, the history, the culture, how trees were brought here as were people, all the elements that are related to trees that we don't think about on a daily basis, I think that would give us a more passionate connection with trees and with nature. So I hope, I can count on the support of the senators, of the government, in furthering that particular aspect of the environment. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I'm just going to read 3 poems. 2 of them are old poems that really deal with nature. And I teach poetry, and one of the things I try to do is disabuse people of the idea that poetry has to be about serious matters. So I'll read a little poem that's called Guinep. And this poem actually made it on one of the London Underground posters. It goes, our mothers have a thing about Guinep. Mind you don't eat Guinep in your good clothes, it will stain them. Mind you don't climb Guinep tree, you will fall. Mind you don't swallow Guinep seed, it will grow inside you. Our mothers have a thing about Guinep. They're secretly consuming it. This is a serious one about the environment that I wrote a long time ago. And many of you will know M.G. Smith's poem, I saw my land in the morning, and oh, but she was fair. So this is a kind of lament. It's called, I hope the Minister of Tourism isn't here, but it's called Rejected Text for a Tourist Brochure. Come see my land. Come see my land before the particles of busy fires ascend, before the rivers descend underground, before coffee plantations grind the mountains into dust, before the coral dies, before the beaches disappear. Come see my land. Come see my land and know that she was fair. Up here the mountains are still clear. After 3 weeks I heard a solitaire. Down there the mountains are clear-cut marl pits. Truckers steal sand from beaches, from riverbeds, to build another Ganja Palace, another shopping center, another hotel. My shares in cement are soaring. The rivers, angry, are sliding underground, leaving pure rock stone and hungry belly. No problem, man, come. Will be one hell of a beach party. No rain, no cover, no need to bring your bathing suit, your umbrella. Come walk with me in the latest style, Rockstone and Dry Gully. Come for the final closing down sail. Take for a song the last black coral, the last green turtle, the last blue swallowtail preserved behind glass. Come walk the last mile to see the last manatee, the last coney, the last alligator, the last iguana smile. Oh, them gone already? No problem, man. Come, look, the film here, reggae soundtrack and all. Come see my land. Come see my land and know, that she was fair. Thank you. And I'll end by reading a poem that I wrote last Emancipation Day. Poet laureates sometimes are asked to read poems in honor of occasions, and I try to avoid that if I can, because it's hard to do. But this is Emancipation Day. How can we measure the gladness of August morning as the dawning of the first day of freedom when we were never enslaved? How can we measure the loosening of shackles, the lowering of bars, if we cannot show the scars? How can we calibrate the distance we need to travel from the history that holds us hostage even now? Remember, the past is only half the circle. Our task is not to grieve or count the wounds, but to free ourselves from mental slavery. Only then will 1st of August satisfy the thirst in us to honor those who have gone before, to hail the future at the door. Then we can truly celebrate our Freedom Day in any way we undertake to close the circle, to wheel and come again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Senator Sinclair to just continue while I have a brief word with our visitors outside.
Mr. President, if I could just express appreciation on behalf of the senators for the wonderful expressions shared with us this morning. Whenever you listen to poetry, and poetry of the standard that has just been shared with us in particular, you're reminded of the beauty of the English language and how complex its use is. When we reflect on our history and the subjects treated with in this beautiful way, it causes us to give thanks for the ability to be here, to be blessed, to listen, to reflect, and to consider what an amazing country we have. And again, then, what an honor it is to serve here. Because yes, Mr. President, it does allow us to meet persons who we have only admired from afar, as we have our Poet Laureate, Olive Senior. We thank her and thank you for making the arrangements and the clerk to allow us to experience her words this morning in person, and wish her all the very best as she proceeds with her projects in respect of the parish trees, which sounds fascinating. And we do hope that Minister Samuda, who is here with us and probably listening, he has charge of the portfolio of environment and is extremely passionate about these matters, so I'm sure you will be hearing from him shortly.
Met with her before.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you again, Mr. President, and thank you, Poet Laureate. Much appreciated.
I'm really grateful to the leader of government business for rising to speak so that it gives me an opportunity. I want firstly to thank you. When you told me that the Poet Laureate was going to be our guest today, I was totally overwhelmed because I have such a deep admiration and respect and regard for her. As she says, poets are often seen as the orphans of the cultural space, but I think that our response here to her today has done something to alleviate that kind of feeling, because we are deeply appreciative. And I thank you for the gift of today, and thank you for using your words in a way to communicate with children and teach them how to become the sort of citizens that we want. And the protection of the environment, which is so dear to all of us here. It is a remarkable idea about the competition with the parishes. Even when we were talking in the room before we came in, you noticed that we were focusing on parishes and schools. And I hope one day you can get to schools. But the work that you do is amazing. Congratulations on being our 4th Poet Laureate. And do share very soon with us your pandemic poetry as we continue to experience some of the consequences of that pandemic. I thank you, Madam.
Thank you very much, members.
This Honourable Senate now resumes its sitting. Statements by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the Senate today are the following. Ministry Paper number 17 and 18 of 2022 entitled Cabinet Agenda Issues dated January 10, 2022 and January 17, 2022. Ministry Paper number 19 of 2020 entitled Resolutions Adopted by the International Labour Organization in December 2021. Ministry Paper number 20 of 2022, an annual report on audited financial statements of the Management Institute for National Development for the year 2020-2021. Ministry Paper number 21 of 2022, entitled The Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Parade Gardens Zone Social Intervention, dated February 23, 2022. Ministry Paper number 22 of 2022, entitled The Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Savala-Amar Community Zone Social Intervention, dated February 23, 2022. Ministry Paper number 23 of 2022, entitled The Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Augustown Community Zone Social Intervention, dated February 3, 2022. And Ministry Paper number 24 of 2022, entitled The Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Mount Salem Community Zone Social Intervention, dated February 23, 2022. And Ministry Paper number 25 of 2022, and Annual Report of the Public Accountancy Board for the year 2020-2021. Annual Report on Audited Financial Statements of the Port Authority of Jamaica for the years 2018 to 2019 and 2019 to 2020. Annual Report on Audited Financial Statements of the Montego Bay Metro Company Limited for the year 2019-2010. Annual Report on Audited Financial Statements of the Jamaica Mortgage Bank for the year 2020-2021. Annual Report of the Spectrum Management Authority for the year 2020-2021. Annual Report of the Runaway Bay Water Company for the year 2017-2018. The Independent Commission of Investigations. Third quarterly report, discipline in the Jamaica Constabulary Force, compliance with INDECOM recommendations, and its fourth quarter report for 2021, the year in review, dated October to December 2021. The Auditor General's review of the fiscal policy paper for the year 2022-2023. The Auditor General's audit report of the project management and governance arrangements of the Tourism Product Development Company. The Auditor General's certified statements, J statement of receipts and payments of the contingency fund of the Accountant General's Department for the financial year 2012-2013, 2017-2018, 2018-2019. The Bank of Jamaica annual report and statements of account for the year ended December 31, 2021. The Planning Institute of Jamaica publication entitled The Jamaica Survey of Living Conditions 2019. The National Minimum Wage Amendment Order 2022 under the Minimum Wage Act and its resolution. The Minimum Wage Industrial Security Guards Amendment Order 2022 under the Minimum Wage Act and its resolution. The Irrigation Licensing of Authority Order 2022 under the Irrigation Act and its resolution. The Integrity Commission investigation reports on the following matters. 1, allegations of fraud in relation to the registration and issuance of a notification of an approved supplier of goods and services to the Government of Jamaica, letter to Elegant Weddings, Event Planning and Catering Limited. 2, allegations of conflict of interest in the award of contract for artistic direction for the 2016 Independence Grand Gala celebration by the Jamaica Cultural Development Commission. 3, alleged breaches of prescribed licenses for the scrap metal industry, exportation of scrap metal in violation of 2 ministerial prohibition orders. Allegations of fraudulent soil and material laboratory test result reports with respect to the award of certain government contracts. Allegations of acts of impropriety, irregularity, and corruption in the issuance of firearm user licenses to persons of questionable character. Allegations of non-performance of contract award to GM Challenger by the Jamaica Defense Force for the supply of a 2014 model year ambulance. Also, the Integrity Commission special report of investigation conducted regarding failure to file statutory declarations with the Commission concerning the following employees of Syria: Renee Badrow, Rosalind Brown, Dwayne Cook, Melton Douglas, Ian Folks, Sanjay Gooden, Ava Green, Lescant Harris, Joseph Reynolds, Dwayne Smith, Stephen St. Just, Stacey Ann Tennyson, Andre Williams, Coral Ann Yee Singh Dowse, Katrina Brown, Jareth Daly, Vaughn McKenzie, Noeline Dobson, Heather White, Crystal Bailey, Edward Campbell, Renard D. Party, Amar Edwards, Nicholas Ford, Colin Graham, Tinlin Han, Christopher Hines, Felicia Senior, Shanika South, Mandy Steer, Cora Thompson, Colleen Wright, Rainier Blender, Sandra Chambers Goss, Alex Henriquez, Simon Smith, Diane Jackson. Now, the law reforms zones of special operations, special security and community development measures with respect to the Augustown zone, the Parade Gardens zone, the Mount Salem community and environs in the parish of St. James zone, and the Savlamar zone. Extension of period of operation orders 2022 and their respective resolutions. And the Auditor General's Department report on the appropriation accounts for Head 1000, Office of His Excellency the Governor General and Staff for the year 2016-2017, Head 72,000, Ministry of Local Government and Community Development for the years 2016 to 2017 and 2017 to 2018, for Head 72,000B for the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development for the year 2017-2018. Head 28,033 for the Office of the Parliamentary Council for the year 2016-2017. Head 30,000 for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade for the years 2017 to 2018 and 2018 to 2019. Head 28,000A, Ministry of Justice for the year 2017-2018. Head 600 for Office of the Services Commission for the year 2012-2013. Head 2,000 Houses of Parliament for the year 2017-2018. Head 2018 for the Ministry of Finance and Planning for the year 2015-2016. Head 26,000A, Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology for the year 2017-2018. And Head 20,000 for the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service for the year 2017-2018.
Bills brought from the Honorable House of Representatives.
The following is a message from the Speaker of the House of Representatives to the Honorable Senate. I have the honor to advise the Honorable Senate that on the 22nd day of March 2022, a bill entitled an act to apply a sum out of the consolidated fund to the service of the year ending on the 31st day of March 2023, and to appropriate the sums granted in this session of Parliament and for matters connected therewith and related thereto, was passed in the House of Representatives. Signed, Marisa Dalrymple Philibert, CD, MP, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Mr. President, I signify my willingness to take charge of the bill.
A bill shortly entitled the Appropriation Act 2022 read a first time.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice of second reading of the bill. And Mr. President, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take second reading of the bill and to take it through all its concluding stages.
Petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice at the next meeting of the Senate, I will move. Whereas by virtue of Section 4 of the Irrigation Act, herein referred to as the Act, the Minister may by order license a company to be the irrigation authority. And whereas on the 27th day of January 2022, the Minister made the Irrigation Licensing of Authority Order 2022, and whereas it is desirable that the Irrigation Licensing of Authority Order 2022 be affirmed, now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable Senate as follows. 1. This resolution may be cited as the Irrigation Licensing of Authority Order 2022 resolution. And 2. The Irrigation Licensing of Authority Order, which was laid on the table of the Senate on the 25th day of March 2022, is hereby affirmed. Mr. President, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the Senate, I will move. Be it resolved that the Radio and Telegraph Control Citizen Band Radio Service Amendment Regulations 2022, the Radio and Telegraph Control Amateur Radio Service Amendment Regulations 2022, the Radio and Telegraph Control Radio Operators and Technicians Amendment Regulations 2022, the Radio and Telegraph Control Maritime Mobile Radio Service Amendment Regulations 2022, the Radio and Telegraph Control Private Radio Service Amendment Regulations 2022, dated February 1, 2022, which were laid on the table of the Senate on the 10th day of February 2022, be referred to the Regulations Committee of the Senate for consideration and report. And I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will ask for suspension of standing orders to enable me to take this motion. Thank you.
Questions and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to sittings of the Senate. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the Senate first obtained. Public business.
Mr. President, if it pleases you, it is intended today to take the motion notice of which I have just given, the motion notice of which Senator Campbell has just given, and then to proceed with the appropriations bill. If that that meets with your approval, Mr. President, I would now wish to move for suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
Members, you have heard the question. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Mr. President, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Mr. President, tabled before this Honourable Senate are the Irrigation Licensing of Authority Order 2022 and the Irrigation Licensing of Authority Order 2022 Resolution. The House of Representatives on the Thursday, March 10, 2022, affirmed the Irrigation Licensing of Authority Order 2022. The Honourable Senate is advised that by virtue of Section 4 of the Irrigation Act, the Minister is empowered to license by order, subject to affirmative resolution, a company to be the irrigation authority for the purposes of the Act. A company so licensed shall be responsible for the implementation of the provisions of the Act in relation to all irrigation areas and restricted areas. The National Irrigation Commission Limited, a wholly owned government company incorporated under the Companies Act of Jamaica, was so licensed subject to affirmative resolution on July 5, 2011 for a period of 10 years by virtue of an order entitled the Irrigation Authority Licensing of the National Irrigation Commission Limited, Order 2011. The order thereafter was gazetted and took effect on July 11, 2011. The order subsequently expired on July 10, 2021. Consequently, it has become necessary for the further licensing of an entity as the Irrigation Authority to continue to carry out the functions under the Act. In 2021, the erstwhile Minister responsible for Agriculture and Fisheries took the decision to further license the NIC as the Irrigation Authority for a further period of 30 years. This Honourable Senate is further advised that the rationale and justification for granting the increased license term to the NIC is to A. Provide greater stability and entrenchment of the NIC as the Irrigation Authority. B. To facilitate a long-term infrastructural planning and implementation of the projects, including the retention of long-term leases, some in excess of 10 years. C. To leverage investment opportunities with external or multilateral entities, envisioning both short-term and long-term investments. D. To promote flexibility, commitment, and security in the NIC's operation. E. To reduce the necessity for frequent licensing renewals, which entails a fairly lengthy legislative process. And F. To facilitate the continuity of the Government of Jamaica's sustainable development policies and implementation processes. This Honourable Senate is further advised that the decision to increase the licensing term to the NIC to 30 years has received Cabinet's approval by way of Cabinet Decision number 01 of 22, subject to affirmative resolution. The order therefore provides inter alia for the licensing of the National Irrigation Commission Limited as the Irrigation Authority for a period of 30 years from the date of commencement. The collection of revenues derived from irrigation and drainage charges and the application of these revenues to perform the functions assigned under the Act. The collection of any amounts outstanding as irrigation charges or drainage charges that are due to be paid under the Act, and the transfer of persons employed to the former irrigation authority to the service of the authority on terms and conditions that are no less favourable than those enjoyed by those persons before the commencement of this order. Based on the foregoing, Mr. President, I ask this Honourable Senate for its full support in affirming the resolution, the Irrigation Licensing of Authority Order 2022. May it please, Mr. Secretary.
Senator Fraser-Bates.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I shall be very brief in our response. And just to say that the opposition, Mr. President, that the opposition really stands in full support of the motion that is before us. Senator Campbell, the NIC, as we call it, National Irrigation Commission, I have some knowledge of it. I do recall my days at LAMP. We worked intimately with the NIC, and one of the things that I recall was just the efforts of the NIC then to work with LAMP to procure titles for the farmers in the St. Catherine area. And I can't say it was necessarily their core mandate, but understanding the importance of land ownership, they really played a critical role and gave good support to LAMP in ensuring that their farmers could have titles. And over the years, I have noticed the work that the NIC has been doing. And I can't say, Mr. President, that I have, well, nothing is perfect, but I believe that they have done a very good job in terms of managing water and water resources, particularly for farmers. And it's because of the track record of the NIC why we on this side have absolutely no opposition to the motion that is before us. But I pray your indulgence, sir, because as we talk about water, there are just two matters I wish to raise. And Senator Samuda and I were at a particular function only this week where I was deputing for my colleague on the opposition, and we spoke about water. And yes, but as we talk about water, there's so many things, and Senator Samuda, I know you had to leave, but the conversation was so enlightening, and I left with so much knowledge and information and a recognition of the work that has been done in terms of making water available to Jamaicans, but also a pain awareness of the fact that so many Jamaicans just literally struggle to have water on a daily basis. And in that light, there are two matters I want to raise for consideration, and not necessarily response, but consideration. One has to do with rainwater harvesting. I mean, I spoke about it on behalf of MP Cousins, but also other speakers spoke about it. And during the panel discussion, there was detailed discussion about it, but during the other speakers, sorry. We have not, and I'm sorry his worship is not here, because as a country, there is a recognition that with water scarcity and particularly the effects of climate change, we have to do more. But I don't believe that we have really taken a concerted effort to make rainwater harvesting a way of life for us. And I believe that as a country, we have no choice. I have spoken in this place already, Mr. President, where I spoke about the experience in St. Kitts, and Senator Scott Motley spoke about the experience in Barbados, where rainwater harvesting is really just a way of life. It is second nature. And we passed a new Building Act in 2018. And I had to go back to the Building Act to refresh my memory as to whether or not there was anything in the Act that speaks specifically to rainwater harvesting. And there isn't. Certainly from my reading of the bill, from the Act, there is nothing in it. The code has not yet been passed or has not yet been completed, to my knowledge. And I want to use this opportunity, Senator Campbell and Minister Samuda, because it is, in fact, your portfolio, that we contemplate and we take action in the very short term to do something, take some decisive action about rainwater harvesting. And this idea I'm putting out is not mine. I don't claim patronage for it, but it's an idea that has found favor with me. And I want to share it that perhaps the time has come for us to really put in place legislation that makes it mandatory for rainwater harvesting. And particularly when it comes down to our developers, it shouldn't be that you are undertaking a development of 8 or 12 or 30 or 40 or 100 rooms and you still have to rely on the NWC. There should be put in place by the developer at his expense or at their expense provision for rainwater harvesting. And I think it is something that we need to look at, and certainly we on this side stand in full support to the government if they were minded to take on that recommendation. And I'm seeing the other thing as well, the thing, and you know, Senator Samuda, I do look forward to working with you. We have done in the past, and I really anticipate that we will have a lot of consensus as to how we deal with these matters. And the final thing I wanted to say has to do with the SS Valley. Now, there is no doubt, and I will commend both the present government and the government past for the work that has been done in terms of Essex Valley. But I have a concern, and it has to do with something I read in the media about a particular company, JISTV, that wishes to apply for mining permit in that area. And I do understand the challenge and the balance that any government has to strike in terms of the extractive industry and the financial income and the environment. I understand that. But it's a word of caution that the gains that we have received through irrigation in the Essex Valley and the benefit that has accrued to our farmers should not be impacted by the mining permit if and when it is given. And I say that because a lot of people, or I shouldn't say a lot, but there is sometimes lost in our discussion the connection between cutting down of trees and water availability and water accessibility. And when we start to exploit our natural resources and in the extractive industry, then there is a possibility that that could happen. And I just want to throw a caution there that in our contemplation that be placed up front and center in any decision for mining permit that is made. That being said, colleagues, we on this side, as I said, stand in full support. It's not my intent to be long. And with that, thank you, Mr. President.
President.
Thank you, Senator Fraser. Senator Brown.
Yeah, I agree with my colleague, Senator Fraser Binns, in general support, but maybe the minister could assist me in paragraph 7 on page 2 of the order. It says, all persons employed to the Farmer Authority or who are carrying out the functions of the Farmer Authority shall, from the commencement of this order, be transferred to the service of the authority on terms no less favorable. Why is it necessary to have a transfer of service to the authority and not remain in the NIC? I represent some of those workers, at least my union, and I know Senator Gale's union also represents some of those workers. And in this order at 7, it doesn't speak to the service of the workers in the previous situation, continuing unchanged in the current. So I just want to get from you, if you are in a position, I'm still on the floor, if you're in a position to clarify that for us. Why is the need for a transfer, and what about the service prior? Is that also going to be carried over and accounted for, as if to say there's no transfer. And I raise that here because I want the answer here for the record, just in case in the future there are those who may come and say that service prior is gone with the wind, even though this is about water. May it please you, Mr. President. Going down the river.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Minister?
Let me assure you, Senator Brown, that the word transfer and subsequent to the coming into effect of the order. So there is absolutely no detriment which will be suffered by any worker who was employed to the previous entity.
President, I just want to, it's not a debate. I just want to, you're saying to us that the years of service.
Sorry, Minister, are you yielding? Minister, are you yielding to Senator Brown?
I thought you was finished. And I'm just asking for clarification.
That's right. Senator Brown, 1 minute now. That's 1 minute. Are you yielding?
No.
Eh?
No, Mr. President. In answer to Senator Brown's question as to whether the rights were impacted, I just needed to clarify that for him, that there is no detriment which will be suffered by any worker, and the document sets it out very clearly. Insofar as Senator Binz's remarks are concerned, albeit that they do not directly impact on this order, I'll attempt to answer them this way. Whereas you mentioned the rainwater harvesting, I'm satisfied that by virtue of the discussions which I've heard elsewhere, that there are plans afoot to put that in place as part of our planning, part of the planning process, so that because I think the authorities acknowledge that particularly in the urban centers where you're putting up all these buildings and there's a difficulty with the runoff and all of that, then that it could very well alleviate some of the problems that we're having in the urban centers. Insofar as Essex Valley is concerned, I think generally there is, in all the planning which is going on and all the orders which are being contemplated, the word sustainable jumps to the fore. That whatever is being done, it cannot be that things continue as they used to be, because we acknowledge that there are changes, some of them made by mistakes that we have made, but some of them by virtue of mistakes other people have made, so that we have to contemplate all of those May I, in the circumstances, ask for the order to be approved?
Mr. President, before the order is taken, could I crave your indulgence to seek some clarification on the matter that the minister has not addressed?
It's up to the minister to determine whether he's going to.
I thought he was finished. What?
No, well, if he's finished, then that's the end of the debate. But if you want to ask minister a question.
Is it that my request for clarification on this matter, which is important to the workers, is not going to be entertained dependent on the minister?
It's not a question of me entertaining it. I'm just going by what the standing order say. If the minister is prepared to take your intervention, then it can be done. Minister?
Mr. President, I cannot take the matter any further.
But he can't take it any further, but he could take it back to the authorities, the point I'm raising. Because it's important. You see, we just lived through last night a company in the United Kingdom telling their parliament that they broke the law.
not going to work like this, The minister has concluded the debate and asked that the motion be approved, and therein lies the status where we are.
And I'm asking, in the interest of the workers, whether or not you would crave my rising on a point of clarification to get from the minister whether the years of service of the workers...
There is no such thing in the standing order as a point of clarification, by the way.
And I guess there's no discretion by the president. May it please...
The question is that the motion put forward by the honourable minister be approved. Those in favour? No. Against?
Object. I vote against.
The ayes have it. Minister? Minister Hill.
Mr. President, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the second reading of a bill entitled An Act to Apply a Sum out of the Consolidated Fund to the service of the year ending on the 31st day of March 2023, and to appropriate the sums granted in this session of Parliament for matters connected therewith and related thereof, and to take it through all its concluding stages.
Thank you. The question is that the standing orders be suspended to enable the minister to take the second reading of the bill shortly entitled An Act to Apply a Sum out of the Consolidated Fund to the service of the year ending on the 31st day of March 2023, and to appropriate the sums granted in this session of Parliament and for matters connected therewith and related thereto, and to take it through its concluding stages. Those in favour? Aye. Against? Minister?
Thank you, Mr. President, and it's indeed a pleasure to be able to take this appropriations bill to its conclusion. It gives me pleasure because, Mr. President, there are a number of things and offerings in it that are really, really useful to Jamaicans. And I'll address probably just 2 or 3 of those in my overall presentation, because my colleagues will have other lots of things to talk about. Mr. President, I want to start with the issue of looking after our people. In this budget, the Minister has outlined a spend of $40.6 billion just to look after the welfare of Jamaicans. 20.6 of that billion is going straight to health, or has gone straight to health for COVID. And then he didn't leave it there. We didn't just have to deal with COVID. We have to deal with people living. So during that period, all through that period of time, the issue of looking after our people, the Minister of Finance gave back $14 billion by cutting GCT from 16.5% to 15%. We didn't stop. That last year, I'm talking about how the government has been looking after its people. And I'll come to how we're going to continue to look after the people. Mr. President, sometimes we don't want to give the government any credit for the kind of things it has done. The $7.9 billion given to people, $18,000 a month, that helped them through great difficulties. Another $4.1 billion given to them in the second supplementary budget, and we gave in even more in the third supplementary budget. So the government therefore continued to look after its people very well. Health, we know what we've done with health. But, Mr. President, maybe one of the nicest things I can say in today's presentation is the following. We've had a very long and difficult period from about 2012 with the IMF. In fact, as I was looking back, I realized that we are probably the only nation on record that had tremendous compliments from the outgoing president of the IMF, Mrs. Christine Lagarde, and the incoming president of the IMF, Mrs. Georgieva, and both of them complimented Jamaica for being so fiscally responsible and taking on the pain to do what we have to do. And this is what they said, yes, because this was really painful for both sides, but we did what we have to do. But here's what the IMF is saying today. Tourism has rebounded to near 70% of pre-crisis level, despite 2 COVID waves this year, and other sectors have picked up as well. Real GDP in the second quarter of 2021 grew by 14% over the same period of the preceding year. And the IMF, not us, the IMF is projecting that by the end of this fiscal year, which will be by the end of this month, the economy will grow by 8.4%. Mr. President, not only do we look after our people, not only do we look after their health and look after how they must live by making sure a number of cash grants were given, but even the IMF, in their last report on Jamaica, said that we're growing 8.25% this year, and that's outstanding by any measure in the region and anywhere in similar states. And Jamaica has a lot to be happy about from that report, even though we continue to go through a severe pandemic which has not eased up as yet. Well, you know, Mr. President, in the giving back, when we launched this giving back arrangement as a matter of political philosophy and the way we would go, when we launched $1.5 billion in 2016, we made it clear that this side of the aisle absolutely believe that it's better for people to spend their money than the government to take it and spend it for everybody else. So we gave them back the money. We didn't stop there. We kept giving back, as I said, the 14 billion more in 2020. And the 1.5 is one of those give-backs, Mr. President, that keeps on giving back. Every year, people get money from that, and we're happy about that. As the Minister of Industry, Investment and Commerce, this is particularly important for me because investors have a measure of credibility. They know that the government is credible and it's predictable. We're not going to raise taxes willy-nilly. So you know what? This year again, 5 consecutive years, no new taxes. Mr. is 7 when you look at, but I'm saying absolutely no new taxes, 5 consecutive years. Now that's probably a record in our independent days of independence. Outstanding for this government. So, Mr. President, these give back of taxes and keeping our fiscal position stable is a great incentive to investors, because the business community in general, locally and overseas, feels that Jamaica is an attractive, predictable investment destination where they can put their money and make sure it continues to grow as our stock market shows. So I'm very pleased, Mr. President, with the budget that has been presented. There's a matter in there that, apart from the targeted benefits that go to ordinary people, and we've talked about this, now you can see where the minister is giving back money to go to JPS, and it's targeted in such a way so that when you're dealing with gas, with JPS and electricity, you're going to make sure you try and target the people who need it most. For instance, tycoons over there and over there don't need necessarily to get back the amount that would come to a person who uses. Everybody knows a Damien a tycoon. But what the minister has done this time is make sure that he looks at people who need the money to pay their bill, their electricity bill, and can't really afford it. And he says, here is a hand up to help you meet your daily and family expenses. That's a good government. Senator Crawford, that's a good government. Then, Mr. President, we inherited certain taxes that has been a lot of conversation about. So the Minister of Finance, in his wisdom and brilliance, said, look, why are we going to give back right now when the government has this need, when we spent all this extra money, $20.6 billion on COVID that we didn't plan to spend, but we had to spend. We've had to spend it. $20.6 billion. 21 coming up, man. We're going to spend a lot more as that, as you can see in the budget. I'll run it through it for you. Okay? So we spent a lot. We're going to spend a lot more coming up. So yeah, man, remember, I have a whole heap of batters in it. Just wait. Just wait. So the minister said, look, all those people like the tycoons over there who drive SUVs, why am I going to give them back the money at this time when the government needs to spend it on people who need it? So we're going to pick out the people who need it, target them again. And this is one of the things that I want to bring forward, how this government is looking at the people who actually need the help, find them and give the money in their hands. No all the funny stuff, and you can't find the money, you can't get it. We make sure it's targeted and it goes in their hands. But, Senator Motley, it doesn't apply to tycoons. So one of the things that also is of importance to me, there's something that I have been pushing for a long time, and working with the Minister of Finance, and now I see it is in his projections, the large-scale pioneer projects, LPPI, very, very important. What does that mean, Mr. President? It means that if somebody is coming to Jamaica to invest $1 billion US or more, can't be less. You have wholly put them over there, man. Wholly put them. Mr. President, so if somebody is coming into Jamaica to invest $1 billion, the minister is making the act in such a fashion that you don't have to know Nigel Clark. You don't have to know Auburn Hill. You don't have to know the most honorable Andrew Holness. You follow the rules. It's rules-based. You bring in $1 billion, this is what you get. You follow the rules, get your lawyer, find your accountant, let them work it out with you, and off you go investing. And what does this mean, Mr. President? I know investors, have been talking to them now for 2 or 3 years to make sure that when they come in, they know exactly, again, predictability. Investors want as much predictability as they can get. So the Minister of Finance, and a big investor over there is not knocking, the tycoons sit over there and we invest over here. So the investors want to make sure that when they're coming in and they're bringing in $1 billion, they're going to employ a lot of people. What are the rules? We don't want to jerk around on us when somebody changes, a minister changes, or something changes, or somebody has a bad day. Here are the rules the Minister of Finance is saying, and that LPPI, the Large Scale Project and Pioneer Industry Act, is coming to the House and Parliament this year to be passed in the law so that we can bring in investors on a rules-based basis, no funny business. It's a good deal. It's a good government, Senator Motley, that is doing that. And so, Mr. President, the LPPI is coming. We are managing through a difficult time of inflation. Luckily, Mr. President, this government had the wisdom to change the rules, make the BOJ independent, make sure it is targeting inflation, make sure that people who want foreign currency in a difficult time don't have to go and Jim Screech around the place. They go to their banks. This is the price today. Last week, it was probably 155. Today, I think it's 153. The price changed. Price changes, but you can get the money. So we make sure the foreign currency that you want is available, no currency rules, no blockage, but also we're looking at inflation. And the inflation that we're dealing with is an imported inflation. I've had to deal with the traders, and a container that cost to rent $6,000 maybe 3 months ago is costing now between $18,000 and $20,000 when you can get it. That's just in the pandemic. With the war going on in the Ukraine, oil prices have spiked and we import our fuel, which is why Minister Samuda is working so hard and making sure we get the legislation in place to make renewables of all kinds much more available. And the Prime Minister has moved the target from 30% up to 50% by 2030. And I suspect, knowing the Prime Minister and see how he's going about this and how committed he is to climate change and making sure he protects the Jamaican environment, because that's a big part of what we sell as a tourist country. As I suspect that 50% is going to increase more in a very short period of time, because we have to get to a place where we stop using very expensive fossil fuel that is often dirty, and when we buy their fuel, we provide jobs for them over there who have oil. When we have the sunlight coming from heaven, we have one of the highest geographical horizontal irradiance in the world, especially on the south coast, and we're not using it as we should. Therefore, we have to ramp up how we use our renewable energy. Given that's the space that we're looking at, the way that we have been looking at inflation, this is a spur. The inflation that is brought in every container of oil must be stemmed and lanced by our own efforts to make sure we move significantly and quickly to renewable energy. And I'm pleased that we are moving in that direction. Is a problem, and it's not going away anytime soon. So, Mr. President, looking at the numbers that we're looking at for the year, we even in this time of pandemic, and especially because of the 8.25% economic growth we expect, our collection, or revenue collection, is looking better than most of our neighbors. And that is helping us to be able to spend in a fashion that we have an increased spending this year because of our expected increased collection in taxes, not of some fabled number, but of a reasonable estimate. And because of that, Mr. President, the government has presented an appropriations bill that takes care of people, that makes sure that we provide an environment that investors find to be attractive and welcoming, but also an environment where the government is managing its fiscal affairs in such a manner that even when inflation is driving the world, we will be able, as far as we can see through this appropriation bill, to make sure we look after ourselves, look after our people, and encourage investors to continue to invest in Jamaica. If it pleases you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Senator Hill. Thank you very much, Minister Hill. Thank you very much. And I invite other members to recognize that Senator Hill stayed within the allotted 35 minutes, even although you look at me with surprise, even although he could have gone a bit further. Senator Crawford, nice to see you.
Same, sir. And being a great friend of Senator Hill, he gave me the rest of his time.
But one of the great lessons in life that you are too young to know yet, but your uncle can tell you, time is non-transferable.
Yes. You see, Mr. President, Senator Hill knew that there was so much to say that he allowed me some extra bandwidth to do so. Mr. President, if I were to focus on the lies, the untruths, and the half-truths that were promulgated during this year's budget, we would not leave here for the next week and a half. We don't have what time or that time to spare, nor do I want to participate in the sleight of hand being used to distract the people from the general inadequacies of the budget and the general lack of policy answers being explored by the government to mitigate the impacts of the challenges the world and the country faces and the dark days that it will carry with it. However, if I would have carried out a disservice to the conversation and to the public not to highlight some of the most dramatic and misleading positions and statements that were made. I will start with the three blatant contradictions mooted by the Minister of Finance, Minister Nigel Clark, who often speaks from two different sides of his mouth, depending on the point he's seeking to make and the points he's seeking to score. The first has to do with the bank taxes and the statement made in defense of sacrificing the people at the altar of the banking oligopoly. In offering stellar defense that the likes of Shorty Malcolm and Tatty Brown would be proud of, the minister stated, "We do not," and I quote, "we do not believe that telling banks what they must charge for the packages of services solves the problem." He continues, "We hold this view as we know it would make matters much worse. We don't believe in telling market vendors what she should charge for mangoes or Sky Juice. We don't tell Sky Juice vendors what he should charge for his bag juice." He said further, "There is a lot of history of failure with the policy of price fixing, and history has taught us that when you fix prices, quantity inevitably declines and quality frequently suffers. Also, whenever there is a fixed price, instead of dealing with the fundamental malady the entity whose price have been fixed will simply pass the cost on to customers in other potentially more damaging ways. We don't believe in telling people what to do and fixing prices. We don't fix Sky Juice price. We don't fix Bulla price. We are not fixing no price.
What?
Maybe he doesn't fix gold price as well. But let me tell you of one price that he fixed. Yeah. Mr. President, the same individual, the same exact person, then contradicts himself less than 3 weeks later by saying the following in regards to taxi operators, and I quote, "At the same time, we appeal to public transportation operators to abide by the fares set by the regulatory authorities." This is the same person that said we don't fix prices and we won't fix prices for banks because of their service. But for the taxi operators, the cost of their service will be fixed by government. This is a contradiction promulgated by this individual. You see, you might not know. No, it's Senator
Crawford, address me, man. Don't take on.
No, I'm not taking him on, Mr. President.
Senator,
but
Minister Campbell.
No,
just proceed, man.
Mr. President.
Do not make them throw you off, you know.
No throwing, Mr. President. I'm very heavy today. I'm putting on a lot of weight. Mr. President, the taxi fare is the cost of the service offered by the taxi driver. Right. The bank taxes is the bank fees is the cost of the service offered by the banks. Therefore, if it is that we are setting no prices, the price of the taxi service should also not be subject to being set. That's right. The reasons promulgated, sir, suggest to me that it is a contradiction being presented, because on the one hand, he wanted to offer defense to the wealthy, and on the other hand, he wanted to offer admonishment to the less wealthy. Mr. President, I soon come, man. We have a look at time. You can't distract me like that. Mr. President, you see, a lot of you don't know that I was born on a day, but I was not born yesterday. Whoa. Two positions by the same exact persons are mutually exclusive. It is not only evident that the JLP is a rich man government who finds every excuse to not protect the people from the wealthy, but quickly act as an oppressor to the poor. All the excuses proffered by the minister on behalf of the banks also goes for the taxis, as well as for the general populace. Example, taxi operators aren't making supernormal profits.
Whoa, no billions.
The taxi operators have high security risk and huge security costs. Yeah. These are things that he suggested are reasons for the bank not to be able to be more reasonable. The taxi operators also have high insurance. He said the banks have to have high insurance because of high crime. Mr. President, the Minister of Finance basically states that because the Jamaica Labour Party government has failed to bring crime under control and money laundering continues at a pace that once again shows the failure as a government, that these are reasons they can't legislate against the banks imposing exorbitant fees. We reject that notion and find that these excuses are unequal treatment through policy to be further examples of the JLP's rich man's government analogy. Let's move on to contradiction number 2. In his closing presentation, the minister makes heavy weather of the need to abide by fiscal rules. He claims the following, and I quote, "The opposition cannot on one hand claim the high ground of having helped to strengthen and on the other slow the pace of debt reduction," end quote. However, Mr. President, in his opening presentation, the minister stated the opposite. Here he said in regards to wage to GDP ratio as a part of the fiscal rules, and I quote, "The implementation of restructured public sector compensation will lead to a significant rise in the wage bill, which will likely breach the wage to GDP target of 9%. in Jamaica's fiscal responsibility law, unless growth surprises on the upside. But he might have meant surpasses. But quite a few mistakes was in the budget and all over, so we don't know. So we will need the appropriate legislative amendment. You see, Mr. President, well, the growth might surprise, because he was also saying in his speech that we were surprised by the growth. So I don't know what he meant. I give him enough respect to repeat what he said. So unless he's surprised by the growth, or it surpasses his expectation, which might surprise him, I am saying that he is making two very different statements in response to one fiscal rule, the wage to GDP ratio, as versus another fiscal rule, the debt to GDP ratio, because one was proposed by the opposition. This can't be a man continuously claiming that there should be some unison and working together when your proposal get a different rule than his. Now, are we saying that the teachers and the nurses and the police should not be paid? Hell no. We have been lobbying for that for a very long time. What we're saying is that you must pick a side and stick to it. You can't for one basis say, oh my God, we have to change the rules. And then on the other side say we have to sacrifice the people because we have to stick to the rules. The leader of the opposition stated that if we should slightly ease the debt to GDP targets, that we could make dramatic improvements to the lives of the people. And by extension, that should be proposed. Now, well, you see, again, the JLP is known for chicken in mathematics, because slightly might be 2%, 1% on the basis of what we're doing. But when you use 40 billion, it's so no, like, my God. No. But let us look at equity then, in the conversation and the consideration. What is the change in the debt to GDP? Because the wage to GDP, it's not slight. If you're going to look at 40 billion, possibly more than 40 billion. Not only possibly more than 40 billion, it's recurring. Every year it will come back and back and back and back. The leader of the opposition never asked for this to be every year. The leader of the opposition asked for the circumstances that we face, that this year. So therefore, if anybody is fiscally irresponsible, it would not be the proposal made by the leader of the opposition, if we look at what is there. No, I'm not. I'm saying that at the end of the day, they have to pick a side. If breaking the rules is irresponsible, then he's irresponsible. If the rules can be broken, then the leader is right to have made a suggestion that the rules can be reconsidered with the circumstances that we face. He said 2 weeks before the fiscal rules can be breached and legislative amendments can be made, but 2 weeks later the fiscal rules are sacrosanct and the people should be left to starve to maintain these rigid rules. 2 weeks later, the fiscal rules are carved in stone and the children should be left to linger in the darkness of education loss due to decisions made by government's response to COVID-19. It seems, Mr. Speaker, that the government's definition of good economic management is to ignore the plight of the people while they seek to make a name for themselves through achieving numbers that mean very little to the people. Mr. President, the finance minister loves to speak about high school economics. I take the opportunity to remind the minister that the government of one basic principle at any level of economics, which is ceteris paribus, all other things held constant. If all things were held constant, I would 100% support of the fiscal rules which the PMP entrenched. The PMP entrenched. And I saw some of them opposed it. And I saw in his presentation him trying to sneak in the JLP, say, oh, this started in 2010, when all the economic realities was sent asunder. But it started in 2010. You should take Edward Siaga's advice that he should review history and give people credit for what they have done in their history. However, Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, the rules which we knowingly sacrificed political capital for to establish, but Mr. President, all things are not constant. The COVID-19 pandemic threw ceteris paribus out the door, and the closure of schools and loss of jobs and income, long-term closure of the entertainment industry, and the reduction in the tourism industry and bauxite industry has led to the suffering of the people, making ceteris paribus no longer valid. All things held constant, you could have continued on your merry way of achieving, which anyone who reads would agree are desirable and hold long-term benefits from fiscal rules. But right now, I can't agree that it is fiscally irresponsible to request that the hungry be fed. Rome is burning while we fiddle with your numbers and skip between two more multiple opinions of the sanctity of the fiscal rules. The third contradiction, Mr. President, is the minister's continued claim that targeted assistance is his preferred strategy. And I heard that repeated just today by Minister Hill. And Minister Hill is a knowledgeable person in the areas of economics. So therefore, Minister Hill should not allow himself to be fooled by statements that are not being followed by action. Mr. President, the minister claims in applying, and I quote, relief, Madam Speaker, we aim to be targeted in our approach. He later brags, Mr. President, we believe in delivering targeted support. When we target, we go big. And he then says further, in applying, no, not your words, the Minister of Finance. Yes, you know better. He then says that, in applying relief, Madam Speaker, we aim to target in our approach. That is, as much as practically possible, direct the relief towards persons who have been and are most affected and who are most affected, who have the least ability to cushion for themselves. However, Mr. Speaker, the largest category continued to be suggested of supposed COVID relief is the 1% cut in GCT. Now, before we go further, this was in 2020. Yeah. Somehow, every year it is being repeated that that cut was made. So the cut in GCT from, I think, 16 to 15 did not happen last year. But it is still being recorded as if it did. That it is savings put forward by the government. You understand? So we don't know how them get this mathematics. But the largest category in supposed COVID relief is the 1% reduction in GCT, which the minister again mentioned in his presentation. It seems, Mr. President, the minister is trained in the art of confusion. I take the opportunity to remind the House that GCT reduction benefits the poor the least and is the least targeted method of distributing any assistance. We told them this last year in the budget conversation, and we are repeating, just for knowledge, this year in the budget conversation. Let's look at a simple mathematics. 5 quintiles within the society, person 1 spends $800,000 per month on groceries. Person 2, 80,000. Person 3, 60,000. Person 4, 40,000. And person 5, 20,000. The yearly GCT savings, Mr. President, would go to 18,000 to the richest individual spending 100,000, the savings, while it would be 3,600 to the poorest. So this targeting is targeting the wealthy and not targeting the poor. It is even greater, Mr. President, because there are many goods consumed by the poor which were already exempt from GCT with the assumption that those are the goods they are mostly likely to consume. So that is not evidence of targeting. That is not a targeted approach. And this is just... I think you now understand, Mr. President. He doesn't understand. If it is that your approach is a targeted one, then how is it that your largest activity, your greatest spend, is not a targeted spend? You could have collected the 14 billion and target it in the light bill, target it in the $10,000 that you gave one time in 2 years, target it in all the other methods that you have mentioned. But you gave up the $14 billion and continue to repeat in words and not action that, oh, you like to be targeted. Mr. President, two moutedness and contradictory statements and actions are not unusual to the Jamaica Labour Party. One of the greatest evidence for this is the JLP's recent grand announcement that they will subsidize 81% of the JPS customers' light bill. 81% of the that is the household cost, the households, not including the businesses. But wait a minute, Mr. President. This sounds very familiar. This sounds a little familiar to me. This sounds like the PMP manifesto. This sounds like the PMP manifesto. Senator Samuda, how it sounds to you? It sounds like the PMP manifesto to you? Oh Lord, let us go further. Like a copycat. It sounds like a swiper. Let us go look further, Mr. President. Wait a minute, man. Let us go look further. This sounds like the PMP manifesto promise that was ridiculed as impossible. As impossible. Ridiculed in particular by the JLP's sympathetic media house, who had a good laugh as to how incredulous and unrealistic it was.
Randy, believe in you, Randy.
No, 100%. I'm coming to him now. I'm coming to him. But even more, Mr. President, this idea was poo-pooed by the finance minister himself. What? Minister Nigel Clark, who now announced it so proudly, was with no contrition and offering no credit to the original conceptualizers. But let me remind the House of what the finance minister himself said when the idea was mooted. This was in Loop News. He said, "Bag of tricks."
What?
Clark takes aim at PMP's wealthy plan during debate. Here he is quoted as saying, "It is simply not credible. It misses the mark. It's a bag of tricks." That's what he said. The Gleaner captured the minister's opinion when the headline said Clark slams PMP wealthy plan. The article continued, the PMP released its controversial plan yesterday, which includes a promise to pay $4,000 towards water electricity bills for over 400,000 households. Doesn't that sound familiar? It sounds familiar. The numbers sound the same-ish. All right. Nationwide news had a headline, JLP criticized PMP wealthy plan as lacking accountability. In reference to the light bill proposal, the JLP said the PMP were floating a pie in the sky, and I quote, a pie in the sky. Guess who that was? Guess who that was? Senator Matthew Samuda. That was Senator Matthew Samuda. That was Senator Matthew Samuda. He was saying it was a pie in the sky. Yes. Senator Matthew Samuda. Yeah, huh? Oh, it's not the same thing. All right, we soon come. Yeah, no worry yourself. We're going to talk a little bit more. All right? It was a pie in the sky. It was a pie in the sky. Senator Johnson Smith said something to you, know, but I won't bother to say what Senator Johnson Smith said because I like Senator Johnson Smith. Right? Yeah. No. Listen, I like egg on my face. It's money when it's on my face. No, this is not the first time, though, Mr. President, that the JLP ridiculed perfectly workable ideas and necessary ideas. It was a pie in the sky. Now them eating the pie. Mr. President, this is not the first time. Them a bake, them a do omelette, them a do frittata. Listen, It's not the first time, Mr. President. The JLP ridiculed a perfectly workable and necessary idea, first at the altar of the lack of understanding, and second at the purpose of their political gain. Let's go back. Before we reach 1.5, that far, we'll go back to Portland 2019.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
The Gleaner article dated March 18, 2019. We no need no more goat. Portland West MP lashes Crawford. In the article, the prominent JLP member and minister says, tell Damian Crawford keep him goat them. Because, and I'm quoting, we no need no more goat. So wide-scale was public ridicule that the Star chose the headline, Crawford goat curried, in reference to the loss of the election. I won't. I take it, man. I take it. No, but I can tell you something about another JLP minister, Minister Shah, when he visited the farm and he saw what we were doing. He said, it's a good thing you lose. It's a good thing you lose. Jonah don't cuss his whale. Senator Brevin is a good pastor. Jonah don't cuss his whale. Sometimes when you get in the belly of the whale, don't quarrel. He's taking you to where you're supposed to be. Talk to them, Senator Brevin. Yes, yes. I only go Sunday school. I don't go big school. I graduate from Sunday school. Now, it says, Crawford goat curry. I won't delay the House by doing the goat mathematics, but the idea that every single JLP representative that set foot in Portland ridiculed is now a central cog in the JLP's agricultural plan. The evidence can be found in a Gleaner article May 17, 2021. Government planning to expand goat population. Which government? Which government? The same government that said we don't want no more goat. Same one? My good friend. My good friend. My good friend. My good friend. That's a good one. A good the greatest of all time. My good friend Floyd Green then stated, where he said Green launches Jamaica 50 million small ruminant program. He's quoted as saying, over the last 5 years or so, Jamaica has imported over US 1 billion worth of goat meat. This is what Fly Green said. Get curry, whole heap of goat meat. $1 billion US. No. Yeah, I don't want too much people coming in. I'm Europe and start. US 1 billion. 1 billion US, my God. Then what did they mean when they said we don't want no more goat? We want whole heap more goat. But for political purpose, it was said, oh, this can't work. Vindication once again. It happened in 2014 when I came to Parliament and stated that we needed an entertainment registry. These quotes are from May 2014. And if you go to the Sotovosha comments, then they say, find something to do. That's what they were saying in the Senator Scott Matley. The JLP was saying, find something to do when I said we need an entertainment registry. In the news article, it said, the registry, is quoting me at the time, the registry is an attempt to better coordinate and organize the entertainment industry so that it can be viewed as and operated as a business. We do not know how many persons qualify for tools of trade because we do not know who an artist is and who the entertainment practitioners are. It is not the same for tourism. It is not the same for other industries because the practitioners and participants are clearly defined. So we want to have a registry that will have entertainment practitioners clearly defined. Additionally, the article stated, Crawford noted, too, that the government has found it difficult to fund, contribute, and implement policies for the enhancement of entertainment, hence the reason for the registry. That sounds like something that COVID has now carried straight into relevance. From 2014, they inherited government in 2016 and has done nothing to further the establishment of the entertainment registry, and then use it as an excuse as to why they can't do nothing for the industry, because they cannot find them, they are not registered. Mr. President, we built it and it was abandoned since 2016 when we lost the election. But you see, Mr. President, for every single one of these that the JLP in tow and many members of the public ridicule, you will find evidence in articles and in the media where I seek to defend what I propose. Senator Samuda is now saying that this is not the same thing. And I don't want to digress, Mr. President, because I don't want to, because I have a whole section of why I have my own personal self-confidence, including the reality that I've heard Senator Graham pray, and he sounds convinced that the prayer will come to light. And when he prays for me, I feel that it's going to work out. And including the fact that I saw my mother sick at 40, decide she's going to do CXC till she reached to her master's. I have good genes, Mr. President. So therefore, I don't, no matter who shout, I have great self-confidence. But Mr. President, when they steal, take, or borrow a concept, you should steal it properly. The JPS intervention is a good idea. It was a good idea when we conceptualized it. It was a good idea when we proposed it. And it remains a good idea now. It remains. However, it is being implemented improperly. I have a lot of goats. It's being implemented improperly. I don't know why you make the people come and look for me though. You understand? That's why I said we come out for the goat thing right now. Go to grow some cow and leave me alone. It's being implemented improperly. The minister states that it will assist 81% of households, which suggests 4 of 5 income quintiles. Because of 81%. The upper middle class, the poor and the very poor will likely benefit from these interventions. With that is what's proposed. Where he's gone off the rails is that the proposal is 20% of the bill instead of a set amount per person. Using light bill as a reasonable proxy for income, the lower light bill should be that of the poorer person on average, all things held constant. So in the case of a person with $12,000 light bill, can be assumed to be a higher income than the person with a $6,000 light bill, all things held constant. And similarly, a person with a $6,000 light bill should have a higher income than that of a person with a $3,000 light bill. This is so because a higher income, you are likely to have a higher energy consumption due to more rooms, lighting, more light requirement for more square footage, more electrical appliances, etc., etc. Now, the subsidy that is being proposed, a person with a $12,000 light bill, 20% will receive $2,400 subsidy. Remember we said that is likely a richer person than a person with a $10,000 light bill. 20% they receive $2,000 subsidy. 8,000, 20%, 1,600, and 2,000, 20%, 400. So in this case, the person who is poorest receives $400 in subsidy, and a person who have a higher income receives $2,400 per month in subsidy. And they call that targeted. And that's per month. So in the 4 months that it is proposed, I see your understanding, the person who is richest, 12,000, receive $9,600, and the person who is poorest receive $1,600. The person who is richest receive from government a $8,000 more subsidy than the person who is poorest. But you one accept says thief it. One for say $2,000 per person. Right. Yeah, try do a local chicken, if you say, oh, it's different. I hear you, Matthew, but I don't show you the difference already. Let us show you what the difference is. I don't show the difference. Yeah, let me show you the difference. If we gave a flat $2,000 per person, if we gave a flat $2,000 per person, the person with $12,000 will receive 16.6%. The person whose bill is $10,000 will receive 20%. The person whose bill is $4,000 will receive 50%. and the poorest person whose bill is $2,000 would have received 100%. That is targeted. That is targeted. Yes, that's my interpretation, which is the correct interpretation. You don't understand the difference between equal and equity. That is the difference. That's what happened. I've showed you with the numbers. I've showed you. I showed you the numbers. I show you the numbers. I show you the numbers that if you use 20% across the board, that you would have unfortunately not considered the poorest in the society. While to the contrary, if you use a flat rate, a flat amount, you would have better considered the poorest within the society. You don't have to accept it, but the mathematics don't lie. The minister, Mr. President, said it is morally right for us to be targeted. The second concern, Mr. President, is the time frame of 4 months. Mr. President, I see nothing to suggest that the needs that cause for this to be implemented will be removed in 4 months. All right, I see nothing to suggest. It might get worse. In fact, a newspaper article just this morning said darker days are coming.
Sorry to indicate that the speaker's time is finished.
It's 5 minutes, Mr. President. No, it's 5 minutes. Give me.
Mr. President, I'm not sure what leeway you're allowing me to give to our colleague on the other side who has been speaking so passionately. How much longer do you have, sir?
You've been performing so passionately.
Well, there is that.
Another 30. I know we like the performance.
Mr. President?
Sufficient to complete, but...
I know that members had earlier said that they hoped we would have some
I'm sure that Senator Crawford will take note of the fact that we are going to give him sufficient time, but he needs to stop
so we are
digressing.
seeking sufficient time with discretion. With discretion.
The question is the minister be given time. Senator Brown, hold on. Remember I said time is not transferable. The minister, the senator is requesting, and it is being requested that he be given time to complete his presentation. Those in favor? Against?
Yeah, Mr. President, I beg your indulgence because remember the minister spoke for about 12 hours, and then again. So when we're speaking to it, it can take a little beanie bit.
But you know, you have to understand.
But I understand.
You have to understand that.
Down where? Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, my American citizen. The minister himself said, Mr. President, it's morally right. As I said, the second concern is the time, because there's nothing to suggest that 4 months the needs would have been removed. And the direction is that it is getting worse. So I recommend that it goes for a year and review of the time, and using the minister's figures, I think that it is affordable, Mr. President. Additionally, we are happy that something is being done for the taxi operators, but yes, my colleague has asked, because Matthew has distracted him, that we repeat that we're calling for the extension of the JPS intervention as we proposed for a year, and that the flat rate be used as versus 20%. Mr. President, we are happy that something is being done for the taxi operators, but again, this is not enough. We also wait to hear what the proposed interest rate and required collateral is. We implore the government not to come with a million exclusion clauses, because we know that this is an exclusion government. For example, the Hackney carriage operators should be considered in the grants, and also if a person owes police tickets, that 25,000 should go towards the ticket and not be used to exclude the person from benefit. Mr. Speaker, however, one has to put 25,000 in context. A bus can use $13,000 of gas per day, and a car $7,000 per day. What they are proposing, not even 1 week gas. It is that is that sufficient penance for the dark days that their actions, because let us not be fooled, what's happening right now with gas prices in Jamaica is almost entirely the fault of the government. Is it the government's fault that Russia invaded Ukraine? Of course not. Is it the government's fault that global economic recovery is causing demand shifts for oil? Of course not. But it was the government's decision to remove the insurance we had in place against oil price volatility, while continuing to collect the money that should have paid for the insurance called a hedge. Mr. President, had the JLP maintained the hedge which was in place in 2016 when the PMP lost government, we would be accessing oil right now at $67 per barrel, which would have meant at the pumps a reduction of approximately 40% in the cost of gas. These were decisions that the JLP took. The Jamaican citizens are being left to suffer at the pumps because the JLP government didn't have the foresight to provide the insurance. It's like a middleman collecting money from you every month for house insurance. And when your house burned down, he tells you he wasn't paying over the insurance, but instead offer you 100 blocks. 100 blocks is not enough. If we had the insurance, we would have had our full house recovered. 100 blocks is not enough. The insurance would have replaced my total house. And with all the foolish excuses being bandied about, the stupidity I hear coming out of the JLP and their supporters' mouths, the fact still remains that by their choosing, Jamaica and by extension Jamaicans have no protection against oil price volatility. They claim that the PMP only insured 8 million of the 24 million barrels imported. Okay, let us accept that to be true. But then you win the election, and instead of fix it, you fix it and insure all. You insure zero. So you said the PMP never insured enough. We imported 24 million barrels. They only insured 8 million barrels. And your fix is to insure 0 million barrels. That don't sound like a reasonable fix. They claim only 3.3 billion of the 6.4 billion was spent on a hedge. Okay, let's accept that to be true. But then you win the election and your fix is to spend not more, but to spend 0 of the 6.4 billion that is being collected. That can't be a reasonable fix. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance, in presentation of the revenue measures, claimed he was establishing the facts about the hedge. These are the facts that he claims he was establishing. 1, oil price reduction led to a reduction in government's revenues. 2, hedge tax was announced in March 15, 2015. 3, the tax was forecasted to raise 6.4 billion. 4, 3.3 billion was paid to hedge 8 million barrels over 18 months. 5, no hedge was purchased after June 15. Now, let us establish the facts. If Minister Clark accepts that it's to be true that reduced cost of oil can lead to reduced government revenues, how on earth is he finding it so hard to understand why the leader of the opposition suggests that increase in oil prices will lead to government having increased revenues? It's just logical. Confusing the issue with very basic arguments about revenue being price times quantity and therefore volumes must be considered. Let's go down that rabbit hole and discuss the price and demand relationship. Let us first accept that the need is a foundation of demand, and based on the minister's projection of continued rapid growth, we will be in need of oil, which is the economy's major source of energy. So therefore, the leader of the opposition was not incorrect in suggesting that we would be needing more oil. However, so we have established that we have a need. It's likely to increase, but the need is only the grandfather of consumption. So now one must speak to the mother and father of consumption, which is want backed by income. When combined, it creates demand. We have the need, but demand is affected by price in one of 2 ways: the income effect or the substitution effect. Let's take the latter first. In Jamaica, the substitution effect for oil is very low, as we have invested very little in alternatives to fossil fuel, and is in fact way behind the 2030 targets. This budget put before us does very, very little to correct that, and is one of the major reasons for the budget's inadequacies. I heard Senator Hill spoke earlier about how the Prime Minister believes in renewable energies, but this budget don't show that. In fact, the minister says that he will allow for some electric cars to come in, and I think he says no more than 1,000. So how is it that the substitution effect is going to take place when you have all the cars where we are driving? No more than 1,000 can come in, because we need the money, he said. So when Senator Hill comes now to say, oh, we believe in renewables, the budget is not saying that, and the actions is not saying that. So therefore, the substitution effect is unlikely. Additionally, so we have very little room for the substitution effect. Additionally, playing a Falabaka international foreign affairs management, we have now also not have other suppliers that once would give us preferential prices, because we took umbrage with Venezuela, and now that visit Petrocarib fell asunder, and now we see the United States going back to Venezuela. What are we going to do? The substitution effect is not available to us. So we look at the income effect. Mr. President, based on Jamaica's reliance for comfort and productivity on energy, it is unlikely that there will be a high income effect. Instead, we will transfer more and more, or a higher percent of our income, to the consumption of energy for our comfort and our production. So the leader of the opposition was correct, because when you look at the price and you look at the volumes, it is unlikely for volumes to reduce, and the prices are high, so the revenues would be exorbitant coming to the government. A study of our history suggests, therefore, that the opposition leader was indeed correct. Now let's look at number 2. The hedge tax was announced in March 2015. This is an important date to remember, and the hedge contract was signed in June 2015. No, man, I soon finish. But there's some things we have to clear up, because the JLP has been going around about what the PMP did with the hedge. The hedge tax was announced March 15, 2015. The first hedge contract was signed June 15, 2015. As was stated by the minister, it was projected as at March 15th that the hedge tax would, for the 12 months, give $6.4 billion. However, all the tax, Senator Scott Motley, don't get collected the first day. It's going to be collected over the 12 months. So therefore, in the first 3 months, going to the end of June, when this contract was to be signed, the hedge tax only provided $1.6 billion, and the total cost was $3.3 billion. It was subsidized from the consolidated fund. So when the minister now tried to give the impression that the PMP collected all $6.4 billion and was unwilling to spend, or Chikini taking it, that is not true. June 15th, when the contract was signed, only $1.6 billion would have been collected. This is not information hidden from nobody. It is in papers all over the place that the consolidated fund had to then forward some money. Therefore, $3.3 billion was sent. What happened, therefore, Mr. President, is that what was affordable at the time was for 8 million barrels. This was from 18 months contract. Very important that we remember that, Mr. President. What happened February 2016? Election happened and the JLP won. So when the minister said no contract was signed since June 2015, all of that was the duty of the Jamaica Labour Party. The PMP signed a contract that took us to December 2016. Why would we sign another contract while that contract existed? So the budget thereafter, read by the Jamaica Labour Party, did not consider a hedge, and they discontinued the hedge in 2016. Additionally, the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance make heavy weather, posting it even on their Facebook, that of the 24 billion barrels that we needed, only 8 million was insured. Again, let's look at the simple mathematics. If it costs 3.3 billion to insure 8 million barrels, it would cost us 9.9 billion to insure all 24 million barrels. The fact that we collected only $6.4 billion suggests that all 24,000 barrels could not have been insured. So that is not an excuse for the government to then decide that it is not going to take up a hedge. Despite the fact that in 2020, many scholars were suggesting that countries should renew their hedges. However, in 2020, the Minister of Finance was quoted in April 2020. Finance Minister praised decision to not go ahead with oil hedge as prices hit record low. That was a decision made by the Jamaica Labour Party government.
It was the right decision.
Well, time has proven it to be incorrect. You know, you sound like the people who say, my house done burned down for the last 5 years, so I don't bother pay me insurance. And then when the house burned down, you say, well, it was the best decision then because it never burned down. That's not how insurance works. That's not how insurance works. The fact of the matter is, even if it was the best decision then, you did not make what is the best decision now. You did not make what's the best decision now. And so we could have been protected at $67 per barrel. Yet we are now being faced with extreme, you can stay there, volatility. You can stay there. And I await. Now, Mr. President, and I close. We have to look at the entertainment industry. As I close. Yeah, man, I'm finishing up now, Mr. President. Because, sorry? I know you want to fund something, you know, but I'm not ready yet. We're going to talk about entertainment. Yeah, because some truths have to be told. You see, one of the things about the budget is our leader don't get to speak twice.
Senator Crawford, you're over your time and you're being distracted.
Tell them to stop then, sir.
Senator Webby,
but sir, let's talk about entertainment.
What he's saying, if you're looking for something with prospect to fund is goat business, not his political career.
When the president starts to get involved, you know, it's risky. But Mr. President, the entertainment industry needs further explanation. Is it likely that the country will go back to being closed? If this is so, what will happen to investments made for the period coming up into entertainment activities? It often takes 3 to 6 months to plan an entertainment activity. Over this period that they were told that we are reopened, should they be taking any consideration that is possible that it will be reclosed? And if it is reclosed, is there any insurance scheme or system that is in place for their investments that they would have to put in place long before it is reclosed? That is a necessary conversation. It is also necessary for the government to indicate to the industry what are the variables that they should look for assume or predict that is likely moving in the direction of a reclose. So is it that if we get back to 15% rate, we are likely to get into a reclose? The entertainment industry will need answers for that question. The entertainment industry, Mr. President, also would need answers to understand more how it is that they will access some of these grants that were being put forward. As has been highlighted, even by the government, very few promoters are registered. How does this promoter then prove himself to be a person qualifying for these grants? As has been indicated by the Minister of Finance, there are multiple people who participate in the entertainment industry who are not entertainers in and of themselves. The chicken man, the whatever man. And I may have to talk about that. I remember when former Senator Andre Horton said that he was a breast man, and them nearly killed former Senator Andre Horton. He had to take it back. He had to tell his mother's story, all kind of thing. There is a particular lady who is a victim of our system, clearly have skills and head and brain, but she was promoting something that is not within our morals of the society. That should never have been brought to Parliament. Not to get a forward, not to get a clap, that should never have been brought to Parliament. And if it was done by myself or done by Senator Horton, it would have been a major problem.
You mean the combo boss?
Yes, the combo boss. The combo boss should not have been. Him says not that one. Yeah, as I say, I was born I'm on a day, but not yesterday. Not yesterday. I'm saying that when a teacher tell a 6th grader to watch Parliament, the budget presentation, that should not be something she exposed to. That's not something that should have come. And I'm talking from my heart. That is not something. That is not acceptable. That's not acceptable. But Mr. President, what the Prime Minister has stated is that he is indeed a supporter of the entertainment industry. But we need to see policies and plans, including a consideration for the removal of noise abatement in the summer so that the entertainment industry can truly recover. With that, Mr. President, I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Senator. Senator Crawford, thank you very much. Senator Webby.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Time allotted, 35 minutes.
Mr. President, I can't recall when I've used my full 35 minutes while on my feet.
Yeah, we don't start today.
I'm going to try my very best, but after that presentation from Senator Crawford, I may come a little close. Mr. President, let me start off, Senator Crawford. I always enjoy your presentation, even if I don't agree with you. And you know, as I stood trying to figure out what part of your speech I agreed with, and it's very little. So I came to the conclusion, Mr. President, that Senator Crawford is a much better mathematician than an economist. However, all is not lost, Senator Crawford. I know you know the name John Maynard Keynes. He started off as a mathematician and ended up to be one of the great economists. So there's some hope for you, and I'll address some of your issues in here. So, Mr. President, let me start off by saying that I rise in support of the Appropriation Bill 2022, and when passed, we will approve the estimates of the heads of expenditure in 2022-2023. You know, Mr. President, I would like to commend the Honourable Minister of Finance and the Public Service, Nigel Clark, on the work he has put into preparing this budget. I was actually very surprised, but I timed it that Senator Crawford spent the first 28 minutes of his presentation trying to criticize our Minister of Finance. And I can guarantee you, Senator Crawford, you are in the minority by far, so you're going on the wrong road. I think the Minister of Finance has lifted the level of budget debate to another level, and that level has now set a new standard for all Ministers of Finance to come. His budget presentation under the theme Recovery, Reform, Restoration was supported by empirical data and deep analysis of the issues. And for me, that instilled confidence for the management of the economy by him and the government going forward. Mr. President, I would also like to thank Darlene Morris, the hard-working financial secretary, and I want to big up Darlene Morris, really good lady, and all the deputy financial secretaries for the hard work they put into each year's budget. Mr. President, team means together everybody achieves more. And my comment about the Minister of Finance and Public Service is a reflection of the professionalism and expertise of the staff of the Ministry of Finance. And I want to recognize and congratulate and show them our appreciation, colleagues, for their hard work in putting together the budget. I also want to recognize the BOJ, PIOJ, Statin, and all the technical staff of the various ministries for their continued commitment to producing what I would describe as a credible budget. Let me also use this opportunity, Mr. President, to congratulate the Most Honorable Prime Minister on what I say is a very comprehensive budget presentation which addressed the main issues facing our nation at this time and setting out the plans for securing a better Jamaica for all Jamaicans by sowing seeds of peace, opportunity, and prosperity. Seeds meaning security, environment and energy, education and skills, development and infrastructure, social partnership, and unity. Seeds. I believe that it was a brilliant presentation by our Prime Minister, very prime ministerial and visionary in his delivery. I was also happy in terms of the security aspect of his presentation, Senator Brown. I was happy to hear the update on Plan Secure Jamaica, which is being systematically and strategically implemented through the provision of technological, telecommunications, training, and other resources. Mr. President, for the last 2 years when we were doing this presentation, I recall for the last fiscal years, 2 fiscal years, we have debated the appropriation bill in the context of dealing with the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Countries around the world are opening up their economies and easing COVID-19 restrictions. Jamaica, as we all know, has followed suit as the Honorable Prime Minister recently announced the listing of the DRMA order. I am cautiously optimistic that we have passed the worst of the pandemic. And I use the word cautiously optimistic. I still want to use this opportunity, Mr. President and colleagues, to encourage Jamaicans to get vaccinated, wear your mask where appropriate, social distance, and wash your hands. Let me now look on Senator Minister Arvin Hill that dealt with it, but I want to expand on it. To say, Senator Hill, that you're correct based on my analysis that the Jamaican economy has been recovering from the COVID-19 impact well ahead of most of our neighboring countries. If you look at the economic indicators of economic growth, job creation, debt reduction, has all seen positive movements. For example, Senator Allen, the economy grew by 14.2%, the highest ever recorded quarterly in the history of Jamaica for the first quarter of 2021-2022, and it is projected to grow by 8.4%. The tourism sector, which I think was mentioned by Senator Hill, is now at 70% at the pre-pandemic level. And I'm sure with the hard-working Minister of Tourism, Minister Ed Bartlett, that 70% will be surpassed in short order. Unemployment, Senator Brown, is at an all-time low of 7.1% in October. The debt-to-GDP ratio has fallen to 96% and is on track to reduce even further. Business confidence, meaning that you're going to employ more with your goat farm, was at 24% ended December 2021. And our net international reserves, to show that Jamaica has enough foreign exchange to take us in the future, was at $3.6 billion at the end of February this year. Our international rating agency, Fitch confirmed our B sovereign rating and our outlook remains stable. Fitch has highlighted Jamaica's consistent fiscal policy effort to reduce our stock of debt as a key factor in the rating. I would say the government of Jamaica and the leadership of the government through the last 3 years of this worst crisis has done an excellent job. Mr. President, let us now look at some specifics in terms of the numbers as presented by the Minister of Finance. If we were to capture the headlines of the budget, I would say it encompasses support for recovery, facilitate reform, and foster restoration of the Jamaican economy. Specific numbers, the total expenditure for 2022-2023 is set at $912 billion, an increase of 9.1% compared to the fiscal prior year, and a total income estimate of $906.4 billion, a 12% rise compared to financial year 2021-2022. If you do the calculation, the deficit is of $5.6 billion, and that is not expected to influence or be inflationary in any way. There's a lot of discussion, certainly in the media, around comments made by the opposition spokesman on finance and the leader of the opposition. I want to recognize the Minister of Finance, and in fact, I had a discussion with him on it, about clarifying an unfortunate interpretation of the budget figures by the opposition, where it suggested that the government would collect $99 billion more in taxes during 2022-2023. It is extremely important, I believe, that the Jamaican people to get the facts, and I will go through the facts very briefly. I'm not giving an opinion, I'm giving facts. And if you pay attention, Senator Brown, you'll probably learn a thing or two about the budget columns. So here's the first lesson. Here's the first lesson. Mr. Senator Brown, if you listen, you'd learn something, you know. All right. So follow me now. To compute how much more the government plans to collect in taxes this coming year, one would have to, mathematician, subtract the latest estimate amount of taxes to be collected this year, 2021-2022, from the projected amount of taxes to be collected 2022-2023. The former figure, colleagues, is contained in the second supplementary estimate tabled and passed in this very House in January 2022, which shows that the estimated tax revenues for 2021-2022 is approximately $606 billion. This figure of $606 billion is included on page 6, check it, facts, of the 2022-2023 fiscal policy paper. In addition, the page 34 of the fiscal policy paper summarizes the second and third supplementary estimates, inclusive of the expected revenue for 2021-2022 of $606 billion. This compares with a projected tax collection for 2022-2023 of $671 billion, as contained in the recently tabled budgetary documents. Tax revenues are therefore expected to grow by the difference of these two numbers, that is $65 billion. You follow the maths, Senator Crawford? You follow the maths? So when you're looking at it, you have to look at your latest estimate, which was published in the supplementary estimates of the 671, and you take off the 606, and that is the increase. So I hope that matter, the 99 versus the 65, is now clarified. So in summary, Senator Brown, if you don't understand the maths, boy, all right, okay. 671 minus 606 is how much? So in summary, President and colleagues, the government plans to collect $65 billion more in taxes next fiscal year 2022-2023 as compared with the current fiscal year of 2021-2022 without the imposition of any new taxes or tax increases. Mr. President, it is therefore clear that the strong fiscal management performance of the government has resulted in the 5th year in a row, Minister Hill, that there will be no new taxes. Mr. President, having briefly summarized the budget as presented, let me say, as a businessman, as a senator, and somebody who understands economics a little bit, there are a lot of headwinds coming our way, and we have to keep it real. These headwinds relate to the rise in inflation and commodity prices. Mr. President, one of the main headwinds that, in my opinion, is a risk to reaching full pre-pandemic levels of growth is the increase in inflation globally and the uncertainty around the duration of global inflationary pressures. I believe that the governor of the BOJ and his team have their hands on the wheel and are doing a reasonably good job. But sometimes when you're talking about global inflationary pressures, is outside of their control in the short term. Mr. President, our situation is not dissimilar to developed economies, such as the United States. The Federal Reserve launched a high-risk effort to tame the worst inflation since the 1970s in the USA, raising its benchmark short-term interest rates. Mr. President, I heard the opposition spokesperson on finance speak about the cost of living increase. And I think it is quite obvious based on the data published that we are seeing in our own country inflationary pressures. But when you are presenting to the nation, you have to put your presentation, in my mind, Senator Hill, in context in terms of food prices and the commodity prices. And as I said earlier, global inflation is the highest it has ever been in the United States. And it reached a 40-year high of 7.5%. And of course, the Russia-Ukraine war is going to also have a significant impact on commodity prices. So based on data that I have compiled 2021 to 2020, let me share with this Honourable House the increase in some of these commodity prices, which would explain to the nation of why we are seeing this inflationary pressure on Jamaica. And I'm going to speak about that later in my presentation. So let's take corn. To 2021 has increased by 57%, the commodity prices. That is a direct 57%. That's a direct impact, on our raw materials in Jamaica. I know goat feed has gone up significantly, and chicken feed has gone up significantly. That's outside of our control. So we're doing a presentation. We need to take both sides of the equation. Yes, it has happened, but we need to say why. Natural gas, I'm going to come to that. Natural gas, Mr. President, has gone up 92%. Soya beans has gone up 43%. Crude oil, 73%. Brent crude oil, 67%. Wheat, 24%. And this is up to 2021. And I can assure you, for the last 3 months, we have even seen a sharper increase in prices of world commodity prices. If you look at the Russia-Ukraine, Senator Morris, they are suppliers of 1/3 of the global demand for wheat, which is a main ingredient in terms of bread. So we can expect that pressure. And I'm being very frank in terms of what I have described as the headwinds. So, Mr. President, when we're speaking to our nation it is unfair to speak about increases in prices without putting in context of why these prices are increasing, so Jamaicans can get a better understanding of the issues we are facing, and we can collectively, as you said, Senator Crawford, come up with a strategy of how to deal with it. And I will speak to this later in my presentation. Mr. President, I don't want to be mean or critical, but the truth is, as I listen to the proposal by the opposition and repeated by Senator Crawford this afternoon, I did not hear the analytics and the empirical data to support what is being proposed. And let me tell you what I heard both from the leader of the opposition and Julian Robinson, and I hope I don't get myself in trouble, but I refer to it as the politics of promises. The politics of promises. When you're in opposition, and that is probably going on from independent Senator Brown, when you're in opposition, you make promises, which I consider, to be very honest with you, and which I consider to be, Senator Brown, I consider it to be a knee-jerk reaction to gain political popularity, which has previously gotten us into trouble. For example, the opposition proposal would cost 2% of GDP, or $40 billion. The question that I must ask, and will ask again, Senator Scott Motley, how is this going to be financed? My limited knowledge of economics, the only way to finance an incremental expense of $40 billion is, one, to raise the taxes, two, to increase your debt stock, or print money. Or print money. Any one of those, any one of those, or you can spend it different. Any one of those is a bigger problem. Either way, to increase the budget by $40 billion, Minister Hill, is going to be a disaster for poor people of this country. The poor is going to suffer most. The poor is going to suffer most in the medium and long term. So, Mr. President, based on all that is happening in the global economy, the tensions in Europe, the discussion we should have been having is how can we be more self-sufficient as a country? In the medium, in the long run, but you need to start the journey, boss. You need to start the journey. How can we be more self-sufficient as a country? I've said many times that we have to grow our way out of debt, the debt problem. In this crisis, there's opportunity. With the rise in food prices, we need to strategically focus our efforts on production to improve food security, raise productivity, and create sustainable value-added food products. I've said it over and over and over. We need to set ourselves a target to cut the import bill of food from $1 billion to $500 million by 2030. This is how we're going to cushion the effects of the rise in global food prices. You know, Senator Allen and Senator Crawford, you know, sometimes, and Senator Fraser Binns, my friend, I see you get promotion. You know, no, sometimes, on a serious note, you know, sometimes, Mr. President, when I'm flying over Jamaica and I'm about to land, and you see all the arable land, the green land, and I say, my God, how can we improve food production? So when there's a crisis, there's an opportunity. And I believe that's where we need to focus on, Senator Scott Motley. We need to invest significantly more in agriculture, both for local consumption and for export. So, Mr. President, earlier I raised the issue about increasing the debt stock, and I will say it again. We cannot spend more than we earn and borrow our way out of economic recovery. The future is too uncertain to take on more debt. In fact, I'm sure all of us in this honorable house remember the JDX and the NDX. I don't want to see any more X against Jamaica's name. And in fact, if you do a comparison, Senator Sinclair, of our peers, right, Jamaica is doing well pre-pandemic, right? When you compare the debt to GDP ratio of other countries, some of them are 10, 20, 30%. Some of them are even 60% above where they were before. In other words, they're on the edge, they're on the precipice. They're on the precipice. I don't want to see Jamaica go down there again. I don't want to see Jamaica going down there again. Mr. President, I've said it before I became an honorable senator, and I'll say it again without apology. I have the greatest respect for Dr. Peter Phillips. I make no apology to anyone. The former Minister of Finance, Dr. Peter Phillips, did an excellent job in running the first leg of fiscal reform against a lot of pressure. Right? Aldershot took the baton from Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, and passed it to Nigel Clark. And let me say, for the records, Dr. Peter Phillips was a very good finance minister, and at one point in time, I used the word great. But let me tell you something. I've never seen a better finance minister in all my career than Nigel Clark. I don't want to say the hard work, and I know Dr. Phillips well, and he went through a lot in terms of this fiscal reform. Let us not disappoint that relay. Let us win the relay in terms of fiscal reform. And I'm going to come to another point here. So the key is to find the right balance between fiscal austerity and protecting the most vulnerable in our society. That is the balance, and it's always going to be a delicate balance. And I would say, I would commend the Minister of Finance for finding this balance with this budget. I really want to commend the Minister of Finance. The other point that I'd like to make before I begin to wrap up is the issue of the Fiscal Commission. Senator Crawford, I heard when you referred to it. The truth is, I don't care who idea it is, to be honest with you. What I care about is that it's implemented as quickly as possible. That is my care. I don't care if it's PMP or GLP. I just want to see it being done. I don't need to score any political points. So, Mr. President, on a previous occasion in this House, I indicated my support for the establishment of the Fiscal Commission so that we can have a body in place that would provide a level of oversight and hold the government at the time accountable to staying on track to achieve the debt to GDP target. This will take away the temptation, Senator Allen, of what I refer to as the politics of promises, which has plagued us, the run with it, the FinSac, to set us back decades and decades. This now will put in place the necessary governance structure that regardless of personality or who is in power or who is not in power, that will have this independent fiscal commission that will provide strong oversight. So in my mind, the commission is not anymore a nice to have. It is imperative to enhance government structure, the governance structure, so that we can continue our path to economic independence. And I would encourage our Minister of Finance, let us get it done as quickly as possible and operational. Senator Crawford, I listened very carefully, and I know my colleagues, after I take my seat, will speak about the JPS, 20% of the JPS bills per household. But I want to look a little bit further, and you made a point about the renewable energies. And you have heard me in this Honourable House use a statement, as I use often in the private sector, what gets measured gets done. So right now, based on the numbers that I have, is that Senator Scott March, about 13% of our current energy usage is renewable energy, 13%. And the government has set a target by 30% by 2030. And I think I heard the Prime Minister say that the 30% could even be 50%. That could even be 50%. The budget is for a year. I'm coming to your point. I'm going to agree with you, I'm going to agree with you. So we need to ensure that we have the right policies in place. Let us take Barbados, which I know you are very familiar with, Senator Scott Motley. They have a simple incentive for retail, for households, that if they put in a solar system in their house, Senator Hill, they get a tax credit. And when you go to Barbados and you look at the level of solar systems in the residential houses, anywhere in Barbados, you can see the presence of the solar systems. Now, these are the sort of strategic actions that we need to take to start that journey towards the 30%. And I'm going to agree with Senator Crawford. Senator Crawford, I believe that the Minister of Energy, first of all, we need to have a chart, right?
Two issues. It's 121. I'll deal with that first. Senator Hill.
Mr. President, given that the time is now 1:21, I'm seeking that the time for the business of the Senate be extended. And secondly,
the question is that the Senate be allowed to sit beyond 1:20 to beyond 1:30 to complete the business of the day. Those in favor? Against? I think Senator Webby said he needed 10 minutes.
If that much.
Yes, Senator. Yes.
The Speaker's time having expired, Mr. President, I ask that his time be extended to allow him to complete his presentation.
I think what Senator Scott Motley meant to say was that may his time be extended for 10 minutes. Those in favor? Against?
Thank you very much, my colleagues. I think this is probably one of the rare occasions that I surpassed my time allocated. But I want to make the point that, so we're at 13% now in terms of renewable energy, and we have set ourselves a long-term goal to 2030. That is fine. But what I want to see is a breakdown on an annual basis. In other words, we're at 13 now. In 2025, we're going to be at 15. Then we're going to, and so the trajectory up to 2030. In addition, what I'd like to see is that the Minister of Energy come to this House and make a presentation of how we are doing against the targets. And if we are against the targets, if we are not meeting the targets, why and what do we do to meet the targets? We have to keep it in focus. We have to get the whole minister responsible to ensure that he delivers on these targets with specific actions going forward. And that is my suggestion. So, Senator Crawford, one of the things that you often hear is that the lack of resources. So when he presents now, and he said, boy, we never meet the target by 1 percentage point, and he needs to say why, then we need to fix the why and track it. Because, listen, this volatility in the world about oil, I mean, I don't want to sound like a doomsday, but it's not going to get any better, you know. Yeah, we're not going to get any better. Whether you talk about hedge or not, we need to use, as you said, the sun, the renewable energy, and focus on it, and put the resources to get it done, and measure it every year, and hold the Minister of Energy accountable to deliver on those numbers. You know, often here, and sometimes when I hear about this government, I've never seen a government, and Mr. President, I've listened to Honorable Prime Minister Andrew Holness very carefully since he became Prime Minister. And I'm sure I'm hearing right. But to be honest with you, I've never heard a Prime Minister in my life that cares about the poor people more than this Prime Minister. Probably the one that comes, probably the one, probably the one that comes, probably the one that comes closest is Michael Manley, right? I've never heard a prime minister caring about the poor, and it takes cash to care. So, Mr. President, I also wanted to note my firm support for the allocation of $16.9 billion to the PATH program. Let me repeat that, $16.9 billion for the PATH program to support the vulnerable sectors. This support will be provided through the PATH cash grant, social pension, Senator Gale, for the elderly, rehabilitation grants, the social intervention youth employment strategy, and the support for the needy students. This government, we care for all Jamaicans. So, Mr. President, in closing, I would like to again offer my support for the bill and say that our resilience as a country has been tested more than ever before. But we have shown that we can get through this together and we will recover stronger. I thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator Webby.
Mr. President. Mr. President.
Senator, I'm just waiting for you to get your lectern.
Yes, please.
Yes, she needs it. She needs it.
You want to come over? Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Senator Fraser-Vance.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I shan't be long, and Senator Gale, I assure you that I will not ask for an extension. But you see, I felt
Senator Fraser-Vance, let me just be clear. If you ask for the extension, you will get it.
Thank you, Mr. President. And you know, I have been sufficiently provoked by you, so I may just ask for it. But, Mr. President, I thought it necessary to make very brief comments on this appropriation bill, because in my mind, pardon me, Mr. President and colleagues. In my mind, Mr. President, this bill.
Assisted Lady Senator, not Senator. And I recognize you from a seat other than your own, by the way.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome, Fraser-Vance.
Mr. President, can I get some protection from Senator Webley?
If you really want it. But I think you are encouraging it. Senator Webby, please allow the Senator to begin her presentation.
Is giving me his full support. But, colleagues, Mr. President, I thought it important to make very brief contribution to the appropriation bill debate, because if we believe that the budget that was passed in the era of COVID, or the last two budgets, were critical, and in fact they were, it is my opinion that this budget is even more important. It's even more important because we are considering all that has happened, the post-COVID, but we're also discussing a budget within the context of unprecedented international affairs, which will have a direct impact on our country. And in that light, Senator Webby, I agree with you, and I agree with Senator Crawford, that notwithstanding all the promises, the utterances, and the indication of intent by the government or the recommendations from the opposition, the single most important thing that we can do as a country to secure our future is to become self-reliant through agriculture. And if we take that perspective, Mr. President, then all the matters that have been aired here and in the lower house will come together and we have a greater appreciation. Because it is in accepting the need to reduce the importation bill that we will have more funds, Senator Webley, to deal with our education, our hospitals, to pay our teachers, our nurses, and to deal with infrastructural development. It is prioritizing agriculture and understanding the importance of agriculture to our economy and our survival that the issue of the environment and climate change becomes center stage. Because then we appreciate that when we destroy our forest and we destroy our environment, then the 1.5 that we so aim to achieve is going to be a pipeline dream. And so our own attitude and our actions towards environmental protection and resilience takes on a new focus. It is in accepting the prominent and the critical role that agriculture has to play in our survival that we will then start thinking about the importance of land titling for our people. Because it is only when you have a piece of land that, well, when farmers have the document for their property, Senator Hill, you and I know that they can take it to any financial institution and get a loan, and they can improve upon what they have. Last week, Thursday, I had the opportunity of meeting a young lady. She's not more than 25, Senator Hill. You would have loved to meet her. No, I say this because Senator Hill and I have had conversations, and from those conversations, I appreciate his view and his real commitment to investment. But a 20-something young lady farms in St. Elizabeth and exports. So she doesn't really come to the Jamaican market. She farms and she exports to Canada and to England. And she, at 20, I think she's 25, is completely self-sufficient. She's not depending on the government for anything. In fact, she is one of the persons that I believe should be an agricultural ambassador for us. And she's a woman. No offense to her men, but she's a female, which makes it even more impressive. Yes, it makes it more impressive because I don't believe that we have given sufficient support, Senator Scott Martin, I know you'll agree, to our women. Some time ago I heard Senator, I was going to use it on the Longhorn, mentioned that she too has an interest in farming. But I believe that we have to encourage more of our women in agriculture. And so, Mr. President, I give support to what was said by Senator Webley and Senator Crawford. Senator Samudo, I also want to commend the government for finally gazetting the cockpit country protected area. You see, Mr. President, Mr. President, on this side, we give credit where credit is due. Because when something good happens for Jamaica, then it's a part of Project Jamaica, and everybody benefits. And the gazetting of the cockpit country protected area is a good for Jamaica. Because we all know that the cockpit country supplies over 40% of water, particularly in Western Jamaica. And this call has been long in coming. I understand the fact that the ground truthing had to take place. For those who may not know what it is, you literally go on the ground. Senator Samuda will tell you, you go on the ground and you see the area that has been declared, and you do your measurement if you're a surveyor, and the technical team do all their measurement to ensure that if you're 15 degrees west or you're 30 degrees north, then all of that is very exact. And I'm very happy, and we in the opposition are very happy that finally that has come, and there is legislative support for that. I wondered, however, Senator Samuda, whether the government has given any consideration to what we have been advocating for vis-a-vis the buffer zones. And I am hopeful that this is something that we will hear about in short order. And the reason why the buffer zone is so important is that it is very difficult when you say, and I'd like to demonstrate, so you have a piece of land, and it's very difficult when you have a joint land and you say, here is the protected area and this is not. What you need is a piece of land in between these two, which is almost like a no man's land. So you can't mine there, you can't do any work, but it acts as a form of security for the cockpit country protected area. And we use this opportunity to ask for that. The government also mentioned the protection of other areas for which we are grateful, and his intent to declare ecologically sensitive areas such as the Dry Harbor Mountain. Again, it's a positive announcement. But as always, the devil is in the detail. If we speak specifically about the Dry Harbor Mountain, there is no doubt as to what has been happening and the outcry that is being made and, in relation to mining in the Dry Harbor Mountain. I had the opportunity only this week to visit the Dry Harbor Mountain, and the things that I was exposed to, I want to encourage all of us to take the time and go and see. The rich limestone. Thank you. The rich limestone, and I mean just the rich ecological flora and fauna, it is something for one to behold. And I wish to find out at some point soon, Senator Samuda, exactly the details of the Dry Harbor Mountain that is being proposed to protect. You know, how much of it is being proposed, when is it likely to be done? And it is also going to be interesting to see how the government treats with privately owned property within that area. And let me say that we have done our research on the opposition side, and we stand very ready, willing and able to sit with the government to share our own ideas and recommendations as to how it can be treated with. And I'm sure when we meet very soon, Senator Samuda, we will have further discussion. Mr. President, there is a matter that is also of import to me that has to do with land ownership. And because he is not here, I will appendage that to housing, or appendage housing to it. The Prime Minister in his presentation spoke about the National Housing Trust, and he said two things which caught my attention. One has to do with the fact that he will be making land available for persons, for developers. And what would happen in that case is that the cost of land is the only thing that's going to, the cost of the development is the only thing that's going to be passed on to the purchaser. And that is positive. But the reality is this, that even with just a purchaser paying solely for the cost of development, with everything that is happening in the international sphere, there is going to be a section of the society who simply cannot afford it. And I want to urge the government to give deeper thought to that, to give deeper thought to see how can we assist those persons who simply cannot afford what he calls the development cost only. And at the same time, I also want to ask the government, what about the use of government land in terms of persons who continue to live on government land in excess of 60 years, some of them less than 60 years? The government has made no mention, and I thought, Senator Gale, that as the government was talking about making government land available for development, that he would have used the opportunity to say that a special committee would be established to look at how we can allocate government lands to persons already in possession if you want to call it by way of adverse possession, you can use that term. But I believe that a progressive government can't be serious about discussing land ownership and transforming the country unless a full review is had as to how you're going to treat with informal settlers on government lands. And I call them informal settlers and not squatters because they are informal settlers. And that is something that I find was missing in the budget presentation. And it would have helped as we talk about securing a future for all Jamaicans. Then to the National Housing Trust. And he talks about 3-person Senator Crawford. 3 persons who can now go on a title and get the benefit from the NHT. On the face of it is a good. But I do have some concerns. And the main concern I have is the Senator Gale. And you sit on the board, so I want you to listen to the concern I have. Because the Prime Minister in his budget statement said that, and I want to get the correct word here, is that a test, he said that the proof is that you must show that the applicants are related. In fact, he said that proof is mandatory. You have to show that the 3 applicants are related. And I have a problem with that. Because in a situation of a mother and a daughter or a parent and a child, it's easy to prove that. But what does it mean by related? Is it blood relation? Is it spousal relation? Because a common law relationship under our law is 5 years. But what if you're in a serious relationship with somebody for less than 5 years? Are you deemed to be related? And what about 2 best friends like Donna and I? What if me and Donna decide that we want to join together and buy a house? Because we're not related, we can't have that benefit? I believe that much more thought is required, Senator Gale. And I'm hoping that when your team meets, and I hope you meet with the Prime Minister, that this will be fleshed out. And this mandatory requirement of family relation, of relation, that it be reviewed. Because it is not going to satisfy the objective, I believe, that the Prime Minister is trying to achieve. So I want to put that out there. And then, Mr. President, finally, the issue of education. And the person who speaks on education is not here, so I'll take liberty to speak on it. I have been watching over time the impact of COVID on our children. And at a place where I sit on some Mondays, my colleagues will tell you that if it's one thing I talk about over and over, is our special needs children. I have not seen, and I stand to be corrected, where in the budget a specific and concerted provision is being made to deal with children with special needs. And I'm talking about your children with autism. I'm talking about your children with dyslexia. I'm not talking about those who are physically challenged, because I'm quite sure Senator Morris will speak on that. And there may be some provision, because those are what you can see. You can see those visually, so it's easier for you to deal with. But what we have not dealt with as a country in a real way is our children who have forms of learning disability. And I am not impressed with the budgetary allocation at all. And I'm not impressed with what I'm hearing from the Ministry of Education in terms of how we're going to treat with children with special needs. And then I want to talk about the education system in general. You see, I know a lady, and I won't call her name because I didn't get her permission. But there's somebody who's quite close to me, who I speak to daily. And her child goes to one of the high school downtown. And during the COVID period, when COVID started, she used to get homework for her child for the week. On a Monday, she'd take it back. After about 3 months, that stopped. I can tell you without a doubt that she has made countless trips to that school to find out what's going on. Sometimes no teachers are there, sometimes the security say they may come, they may not come. But school has not reopened because everybody goes face to face. But that child who left school at grade 8 is now performing at grade 6. Because during the COVID period, they had no support. Not only, yes, he has literally regressed. And that is not just his situation alone. I am not convinced that the budgetary allocation sufficiently deals with education system. And Mr. President, I will say this as well, that there is an acceptance that we have lost some of our children to COVID. But what I'm not seeing is sufficient provision being made to get back those children. And if sufficient provision was being made to get back those children, and if there is provision, I will wait to see the documentation. But these are some of the things that I believe a budget would deal with. You would deal with a whole-scale assessment. So I know that the minister spoke at the Standing Finance Committee about an assessment that's been going on in schools. Is the assessment forensic enough? Is the assessment far-reaching enough? Is the assessment right across the base from early childhood education to tertiary education? I am not convinced that the budget makes provision for that. My now 3-year-old, who had the benefit of going to kindergarten before most children, had to go 1 grade behind when school opened fully. Why was that? Because I, as a parent, was not sure that he would be able to perform at the grade where he's supposed to be at his age. But secondly, the school that he attends also believe that all children need to be assessed. But that is me. And it's because, thankfully, I'm in a position to send my child to a school that affords that. But how many Jamaicans can do that? And I believe that it is the government's responsibility to make provision in the budget to deal with that. And I am not convinced that that provision has been made. The second thing, Mr. President, is that if you're serious about the education and getting back the 100,000 children that we have lost to COVID, is that we have to put a special line item in the budget for guidance and counseling. Now, you know, Senator Morris, in his absence, has said this over and over, that we need more social workers in our country. We may not have enough trained social workers, but we have psychology students at UWI. We have psychology students at Michael. We have trainee teachers. I believe that as part of getting back our children and restoring our educational system, that there needs to be sufficient budgetary provision for even a temporary cadre of social workers or social interveners to deal with the plight of our children. I am not seeing that in the ministry's budget. I am not seeing that in the government of Jamaica's budget. I have heard, in fairness to the minister, that there are plans, but I'm not seeing the resources being provided to support those plans. And if we don't do it, Mr. President, I am afraid that the effects will be seen in a shorter time. I used to say 5 years, but I'm saying you're going to see the effect in another year. In fact, you're seeing the effect now. When you hear about the number of children, the number of deaths and violent activities that are taking place in schools since we opened, it is shocking. And part of it has to do with the antisocial behavior that would have developed or would have become entrenched during the COVID period. And if we're serious about reculturing and recharting how our children and how our country is going to move forward, then we have to spend the bucks. We have to spend the bucks. And so development is important, Senator Hill. I support the development of highways and roads because the road to development is the development of roads. I support that. But let us take a stop and say, but we have COVID. We have so many children who need a different kind of development. So can we pause on one of the highway for 6 months and use some of that money to deal with our emergency with our children? Can we pause on doing something else and deal with emergency with our children? Because if we don't, the effects are... Yes. And so, Mr. President, I want to urge the government that it is not too late for supplemental budgets to come to the Parliament. And I don't pretend to have a full working knowledge of how it works. My knowledge is limited to what my mom would have shared with me over the many years. But I do know that sometimes you have to do variation or variance, I think that's what they call it. And I am hopeful that even though the Senate can't vote against the appropriation bill or the budget as we call it, that the discussion that will take place here today and the recommendations that will have been shared, that they will be viewed as not a criticism of the government, but that they will be seen as an attempt to genuinely help the government to truly show its care for all Jamaicans. Because already we're not going to regulate bank fees, but we're going to regulate tax affairs. And so there's a section of the society that feels, where is their justice? What we have to do to show that there is justice for all is to ensure that everybody have a piece of the cake. And I hear the discussion about what is going to be done on the path and what is being done under this care program. But in doing that, the government also has got to stop and review the findings of CAPRI and all the other studies that were done in terms of how care packages and care allocations were granted during the COVID period. Because they're what we call lessons learned. And until and unless we revisit, accept the limitations, and see how we can improve upon them, then those that need our care and our attention the most is not going to get it. And I believe that the opportunity that exists in this most important budget is that we can cross the aisle, just as Senator Samuda and I do from time to time on environmental issues. Let us cross the aisle and let us truly carve a budget that puts people, everybody, whether you're downtown or you're uptown or you're in the country, whether you're in Mobay or you're in St. Anne or Trelawney or St. Mary or Clarendon, everybody will feel that this is their budget and there is something in this budget for them. And with that, Mr. President, I thank you. I'm quite sure that my sister will have an opportunity to rebut. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Senator Fraser-Binns. In consultation with the staff, I'm going to take, usually I take a 3/4 of an hour. I'm going to rise until exactly 2:30 when we will continue. I hope that's okay with everyone. Excellent. The Senate will now rise until 2:30 exactly.